Welcome to Film Detour, a podcast where two longtime film buddies take you down and around the back alleys and side streets of cinema.
With the occasional left-hand turn.
I'm John Napick.
And I'm Bob Mueller. So let's go. John, you ready?
I'm ready.
Let's hit it.
Today's show is Shadow of a Doubt.
Directed by Alfred Hitchcock, 1943.
Universal Studios. So Alfred Hitchcock, he had a long career, basically spanned the history of cinema.
Yeah, from silence all the way up to the 1970s.
Yeah.
An amazing career, a genius of cinema, without question.
He basically developed cinema as we know it, how we watch it, like the film grammar of cinema. So he has almost two halves to his career. He began in England, where he was born. So he has all these great English films.
I love the British films. His first sound movie is Blackmail, which is a terrific little movie. And it was originally started out as a silent film, and he was playing with ideas of sound, and he worked them in. So it's a really nifty little early Hitchcock gem.
And then he did The Man Who Knew Too Much in 1934, which he remade later in his career.
I like them both, but I really, really love the one with Peter Lorre. It's a gem. The 39 Steps, which is a really fun movie.
Sabotage.
I love that one with Sylvia Sidney, the beautiful Sylvia Sidney, and the infamous kid on the bus scene.
With the bomb under the chair?
Bomb under the chair.
Yes, there's so many great scenes in Hitchcock, we can't even begin.
And the Lady Vanishes.
Which is another fun movie.
It's a really fun movie, and it just takes off like a shot, and it goes and goes and goes. And this really fun thing about cricket. I mean, this whole big shtick about the cricket badges.
Like one of the great train journey films.
Absolutely.
And then he moved to the U.S. I think David O. Selznick brought him to the U.S. to make Rebecca, which takes place in England, but it was an American film.
Yeah, it's a terrific movie.
And he's got a whole bunch of great films.
Notorious, one of my all-time favorites.
Right. Foreign Correspondent, Joel McCrea.
He's really great in that. It's a really nifty little movie. That's the one with the windmill. Isn't there a windmill?
The windmill,
in it? Yeah.
Yes. And Suspicion.
Cary Grant.
I mean, there's tons. Lifeboat.
You got Rear Window. You got The Wrong Man with Henry Fonda, which is a really very different Hitchcock. It's very, very cold. There's no Hitchcock humor in that one.
Another Cary Grant, North by Northwest.
Yeah, which is a classic chase movie. Vertigo, Psycho, we know. Yeah. What else you got to ask for, John? I mean, we're not even going through all of them, but what else do you really have to ask for? And, of course, his last masterpiece, Frenzy.
And it took him back to England.
Exactly. Went full circle.
So in this movie, there's some great actors. Let's start with Teresa Wright, who plays the young Charlie.
I love Teresa Wright. You look at Teresa Wright and you fall in love with her. She's just beautiful, all-American, but she has acting chops.
Yeah.
She is so good. You believe every time you see her on the screen, you believe what she's doing.
She looks like your typical all-American girl.
And I'm sure that's why Hitchcock chose her for this.
She's been in a bunch of great films. Mrs. Miniver, which is one of the great movies about wartime.
Well, it's actually the movie that got the American public behind the war effort. It was instrumental.
And then Pride of the Yankees with Gary Cooper.
You know, this is how good she was. For her first three movies, The Little Foxes, Mrs. Miniver, and Pride of the Yankees, she was up for Academy Award nominations.
And she's very different in each one.
Absolutely.
Like Pride of the Yankees, she's so sassy as the wife of Lou Gehrig.
Lou Gehrig.
But here she's playing like a young woman who becomes a grown woman. She's married.
Right.
And then the next film, Shadow of a Doubt, she's a teenager.
Right. And she can just pull it off. I mean, she's also a teenager in the best years of our lives.
Yeah.
Or she's, I guess, maybe early 20s, whatever. But I love that movie.
That's another movie about the effects of war.
Right.
A really good movie.
She's terrific in that. She's also in The Men, Brando's first film.
And then, of course, we have Joseph Cotton as Uncle Charlie.
I mean, he goes all the way back to Kane.
Yeah.
You know, to Citizen Kane, 1941.
So he did end up in a lot of Orson Welles films.
Right.
The Magnificent Ambersons, he's fantastic in. Journey into Fear, he's in it with Orson Welles.
Right. And also The Third Man with Orson Welles. He's in The Portrait of Jenny, which I really love.
Great New York ghost story.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a really haunting film.
Someone who has had a long career, I mean, he's all over the place. You got so many different movies. We'll just throw some out here. He was in Soylent Green, John. And what is Soylent Green, by the way?
People.
Very good. Very good. He was in The Abominable Dr. Phibes. During this period, he made some pretty cheesy horror films in Italy. One was Lady Frankenstein. And, of course, John, in 1981, he was on The Love Boat.
Oh.
I believe everybody, at one time or another, is on The Love Boat. Whether they're dead or alive, it doesn't really make much difference.
If you needed a paycheck in Hollywood,
yes,
you got on The Love Boat.
There you go.
Just two others on this. Henry Travers is Joe, Charlie's dad. Great English actor.
We all remember him largely as Clarence the Angel in It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah.
And then we got Hume Cronin.
Hume Cronin. Herbie Hawkins in this.
He was actually very young at the time. I think it's his first movie. He came out to Hollywood, and when they looked at him, they said, sorry, you're too young. But Hitchcock liked him and said, we'll color his hair a little bit, put some specs on him. He'll be fine. And he's terrific. You totally believe he's that guy who lives down the block. And he was in another Hitchcock, Lifeboat.
And also another Hitchcock, Rope.
He was in The Postman Always Rings Twice.
Wow.
The two Hume Cronin movies that stick with me, and because they're so different, is this one,
right,
Shadow of a Doubt, and Brute Force.
With Burt Lancaster.
He plays the most sadistic prison guard I've ever seen. I mean, you can't believe it's Hume Cronin. He's just unbelievably sadistic.
I mean, to go from this film where he's this kind of goofy, lifelong bachelor to that sadistic guard.
Unbelievable. So that just shows his range. So terrific actor.
Towards the end of his career, The World According to Garp and Cocoon.
Spans the decades.
Screenplay, Thornton Wilder.
Right.
Sally Benson and Alma Revelle.
Yeah, that's Hitchcock's wife, who was his creative partner for his entire...
They started together in
back in silent films, yeah. She was his continuity girl.
She also did some script writing on Suspicion and The Lady Vanishes.
Yes, she had her hand in a lot of different things, finishing touches, etc. But, one of the authors of the screenplay that we don't really hear about, he's not credited, but Hitchcock. Hitchcock was very much hands-on on this project and all the projects he worked with the screenwriters. He began this piece with Thornton Wilder, and then Thornton Wilder had to go off to war.
Right.
So he brought this other woman in,
Sally Benson,
who's the playwright that also had some notable work out. And then Alma Revelle was there to kind of, I guess, sew up all the pieces.
And of course, we all know Thornton Wilder from two things, Our Town, which is a great play, and The Bridge over San Luis Rey, which is a novel. And of course, Our Town, it's almost like a mirror of this, the whole themes about Americana and the underbelly of Americana.
Right. It actually, if you think about it, this movie is a little like David Lynch's Blue Velvet. He's taking pleasure, which Hitchcock did take some perverse pleasure in messing with genres and American icons, and where Lynch took this little, suburban town and peeled back the veneer.
And the cinematographer is Joseph A. Valentine.
Yeah.
Another one of these guys where they're kind of everywhere in Hollywood. They've done almost every film.
John, he started in the 20s, and he went all the way up to the 50s. I mean, this guy he did everything imaginable. He did Rope, another...
Hitchcock.
Saboteur. He did Joan of Arc with Ingrid Bergman.
The Wolf Man.
And My Little Chickadee.
And let's not forget In the Navy and Abbott and Costello.
John, if it's an Abbott and Costello, I'm on board.
Not the Village People movie, the Abbott and Costello movie.
No, I don't think he was still working at that time when the Village People were out.
And music.
Dmitri Tiomkin. This guy basically, I'm pretty sure he did every movie from the 1940s and 50s. I mean, he's all over the place.
Early on, he did a lot of Capra stuff. Frank Capra.
Right. Well, he did it. It's a Wonderful Life.
Yep. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington.
Right.
And then Hitchcock took him on, Strangers on a Train.
He also did I Confess with Montgomery Clift. He did Cyrano de Bergerac. He did The Men with Marlon Brando. He did DOA.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And then in the 50s, he started to do a lot of Westerns. Duel in the Sun.
Red River.
High Noon. He did High Noon, but also the song, Do Not Forsake Me, Oh My Darling.
He did the song for that, too. I didn't know that.
Giant and Rio Bravo.
So this guy could really, any genre, anytime, any place. He did these lush, wonderful scores that could be sweeping at certain times, and other times just break it down to mostly piano, which is really, really effective in Shadow of a Doubt in certain scenes.
And then I was just surprised to see that he did The Guns of Navarone.
Proof positive he could do anything. What I like about this is it's a Universal picture. And you get the great opening with those stars, those glass or lucite stars spinning around, and you have that silver globe. It's one of my favorite openings for Universal Pictures.
Right.
The other one is the plane going around the world. And it always reminds me of Universal horror films. But as soon as I see this with the spinning stars, I'm happy. I'm ready to go.
And we hear this song, The Merry Widow. It's a waltz, and you see these Victorian-era couples kind of spinning through the frame.
Yeah, it's just the camera's locked in place, and they keep spinning by as couples, one after another after another. It almost seems like they're on a conveyor belt or something. Yeah. It's evoking another time, this time of romance and beauty, and that I believe Hitchcock is trying to conjure up and start us off with.
But then it's a huge contrast to what we see next, and it's this eastern cityscape, which turns out to be Newark.
Don't make any Jersey jokes.
No. But you see the Pulaski Skyway.
The Pulaski Skyway always gave me the creeps, John. I grew up in Jersey. It always gave me the creeps. When you drove past it on the turnpike, you're driving past the Jersey swamps, which is why everybody makes fun of New Jersey. And you're driving on the turnpike, and then you come across this looming black erector set looking thing. And it kind of gave you the creeps. Yeah. But it was an innovation of its time.
And again, so the camera pans. It's not the glittery city. This is like the industrial side of the city.
Absolutely, and it's you can see the decay on the waterfront there. There are a couple of bums there, and the camera continues to move on, and then it dissolves into this other part of the waterfront, and you see this no dumping sign that seems to have sprouted, grown out of this trash heap of old beat up cars.
Which again, Hitchcock telling us we're not in the best part of town.
Right.
And we cut to this block, tree line, but there's these kids playing baseball in the street, and you see these brownstones or these old houses, but they're a little on the ramshackle side.
Rooming house.
And you see rooms for rent signs. Right. And the camera then kind of pushes into this window.
And it has an angle to it. You can tell there's something unsettling coming up. It's a very noir type angle. Yeah. It comes in towards the door, actually, at first. And the number on the door is 13. So that gives you a little indication that maybe this isn't the best place in town. Maybe the situation we're coming into is not going to be so great.
Just to know, there is nothing by accident in a Hitchcock film. Yeah, every detail is planned out. So pay attention.
And then, like you said, it goes up to the window, and then we move into the room, and what do we see, John?
Laying on the bedspread. Again, we've just come from daylight. We're in the shadowy room, and there's Joseph Cotton. Fully dressed.
Most of the room is in shadows. His face is kind of dappled with sunlight.
But who's in the middle of the afternoon just laying in a darkened room? He's just there.
He's lying there. He's got this really expensive, sharp-looking pinstripe suit. He's got a cigar in his hand.
And then the camera pans over, and on the night table next to the bed is all this loose cash.
Oodles of money.
A lot of it just curled up like he took it right out and just dropped it.
Right. And it almost looks like his wallet exploded or something.
Yeah.
Because the money's out of the wallet. It's on top of the wallet. And then...
and it's just laying there. And the camera tilts down and it's spilled onto the floor.
Yeah.
It's just, again...
like it overflowed from the wallet.
And then there's a knock on the door.
And there's a really neat shot. It's this kind of medium shot. And there's Cotton lying on the bed. And he's got his eyes open. And so it reminds me of Citizen Kane. It has that deep focus photography in it where he's right in the foreground and the background still is nicely in focus. And he says, "Come in," and this woman comes in. And she's the landlady, the rooming house lady. And then she sees the money on the floor.
She's like, "Mr. Spencer, you shouldn't leave that money lying around." She just goes to pick it up.
She's all bent out of shape about it.
Yeah, like... that's a lot of money.
So she explains that these two men came by and they were looking for him and that they said they'd be back. She covered for him because he said he didn't want to be disturbed. And he says to her, Mrs. Martin, it's very funny. They aren't exactly friends of mine. In fact, I've never seen them. Maybe I'll go out and meet them. Then again, maybe I won't.
It's a weird voice. It's like no emotion to it.
It's very cold.
Yeah.
And it's kind of chilling. So she says, don't worry about it. You need your rest. And she goes over, she pulls down the shade, and it's really great because there's a close-up of Cotton lying on the bed, and the shadow just comes down over his face.
Right.
And what I got out of that is just, here's a guy who lives in the shadows. This is who this guy is. We don't really know anything about him. And then she leaves. He gets up from the bed. He takes a drink of water, stands up, and then he throws the glass, boom, smash, into the sink across the way. He's really pissed. And then he goes to the window and opens the shade, looks outside, and you hear in the voiceover, you guys are bluffing. You don't got nothing on me. So you know that he's definitely running away from these guys or trying to get past these guys.
And I think he's upset because they've caught up with him.
Yeah.
And now he gathers his things and he's getting out of there. And he steps out the front door and you see these two guys. Obviously, they're
fake talking to each other. They're obvious as could be.
They're playing clothesmen, it looks like. They're on the corner. And Joseph Cotton, almost with nerves of steel, he just starts walking directly towards them. He's walking right at them. And straight at them to the effect that the one guy sees him and he kind of moves his body.
He had to move his body because Cotton was going to shoulder him.
And he goes right past him around the corner.
It's very intimidating to watch.
And another great Hitchcock shot where you see behind them a reverse angle, like right between them, Cotton's just walking right down the sidewalk, just striding away.
Confident as could be.
Yeah. And then we cut to this great high-angle shot, this vacant lot, where you see Cotton run through.
Right.
And in the same shot, like a moment later, they come out.
Yeah, it was almost Abbott and Costello-like because they're like, where'd he go?
And they kind of split up. It's just Hitchcock just lays everything out for you. And it's almost like a silent movie. Like you just see this action happening.
But that's why it's not an accident, because Hitchcock started in the silent film, so he understood how to put a story together visually.
That's a good point.
And then the camera pans up, and there's Cotton watching down, smiling, and taking a puff off his cigar. And the music's really great because it's almost a womp, 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 you know? And the interesting thing, John, is this all takes place in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
That's it. You have all this stuff set up in 5 minutes. Amazing. The next scene we see him in, he's in a pool hall. He gets a telephone.
Yeah.
And he makes a phone call. He says he wants to send a telegram to Mrs. Joseph Newton in Santa Rosa, California.
A telegram, back in the day, it was like email. It was how you got a message to someone, but it was pretty fast, and you paid for it by word. So you kind of talked in this kind of truncated.
Well, this is what he says. He said, lonesome for you all. Stop. Am coming out to stay with you for a while. Stop. Will arrive Thursday and try and stop me. Love to you all, and a kiss for little Charlie from Uncle Charlie.
And we cut to another cityscape, but totally different this time. We're out in California. It's Santa Rosa, every town USA.
Absolutely.
And, the great thing about this movie, it was filmed on location for the most part. There are some studio sets, but for the most part in the town of Santa Rosa.
This is very unusual for Hitchcock.
Yeah.
Hitchcock really loved the control of the studio.
Because he can control the environment.
Everything.
Yeah.
And he liked being able to do that for every shot, every little nuance, but he really wanted it to look like the real thing. So they shot it in the real town, in the real house that we'll find it in a couple of minutes.
Yeah. And
it shows.
And almost like a mirror of the beginning, we cut to this tree-lined street.
Right.
But this is much nicer.
Right.
Typical,
same kind of sunlight too, John. There's a dappling afternoon sunlight.
Typical suburban houses, but I did read that Hitchcock didn't want it to be too upscale. He wanted them to be kind of working class. These are people, they didn't have a lot of money, but it's small town America. And again, the camera kind of goes up to the window. Same kind of shot as the beginning.
And even the angle has a sort of noirish tilt to it as well. So we know, there's something going on here.
Yeah.
And as the camera goes into the window, this young girl is lying on the bed, her hands behind her head, and she's just staring up at the ceiling, very much like Joseph Cotton was, and her face is dappled in the similar sunlight of the afternoon.
Throughout the film, there's a lot of coupling between these two, we see, in various ways.
This is Charlie.
Yeah.
Or Little Charlie.
They call her Little Charlie.
Basically, the uncle's namesake. And she's up in the bedroom and she's just in a funk.
Yep.
The world is just not working for her, and her whole family is just a mess. The world is not happening for me. Everything's so dull, everything's so boring. We do the same darn thing every single day.
But you can see it's other things, though, because her mother shows up from work, and her clothes are kind of not brand new. They're a little worn, and she's upset because she's like, Mother, you didn't go out in that awful hat, did you?
Right, because she wants to have her mother look glamorous, classy at least.
Well, she wants better things for her mother.
She's got this old frumpy-looking hat, and
Yeah.
the mother just doesn't care about that. She said, what difference does that make?
And it's almost like she's too big for this town. And you can see that. Her brain is bigger than this environment. You know, she just wants to go on to do other things.
She complains that she says, we just eat and sleep, and that's all. We don't even have real conversations. We just talk. And she says, I guess we'll have to wait for a miracle. And her father and her mother look at her like, what? What does that mean?
So she decides the best way to fix this is go send a telegram
To her Uncle Charlie.
And you can see when she says Uncle Charlie, the mother's eyes kind of light up.
Because that's her brother.
That's her younger brother.
That she's not seen in a long time.
Yeah.
So she heads down to the telegraph office. She's going to send a telegram to her Uncle Charlie. And when she gets there, there's a telegraph for the family that says Uncle Charlie's coming. They definitely have a psychic connection.
Yeah.
There's something going on between these two people, and it gets brought up during the course of the film, but we get a sense right there that there's a psychic connection. And
well, she even says to Miss Henderson, the postal lady, she goes, Miss Henderson, do you believe in telepathy? Like, I was actually shocked that was a thing back then. But she knows there's some kind of connection.
Right. And she leaves beaming and she says, he heard me. He heard me. And she's just completely changed.
Yeah, you can see she's so
revived.
much brighter. She's strolling down the street happy.
Everything's right with the world at this point. So then we cut to the train, and the porter comes up and says to Mr. Otis, who's in this sleeper.
Now notice, it's Mr. Otis, not Mr. Spencer.
We hear the voice. It's obviously Uncle Charlie.
Right. So it's his train car. You see on the right side are these sleeper compartments. And
with the curtains.
The curtains are drawn.
Right.
And on the left, there's just people seated.
There's a doctor and his wife who are sitting at this table playing cards. And they're playing cards with somebody. Who is that, John?
It's Mr. Hitchcock.
Mr. Hitchcock. That's his cameo right there.
That's his cameo.
Yeah.
You hear the conductor ask for Mr. Otis. He's like, how you feeling, Mr. Otis? And again, we hear this deadened voice. I'm okay. And we learn that he's just been hidden away the whole train ride. So the whole family, except for Mom, is going to the station to pick up Charlie.
To pick up Uncle Charlie.
And we see the train pulling into the station. And it's just billowing.
Black smoke.
A lot of black smoke.
Normally when you see a smokestack, it's whitish smoke. So this black smoke is billowing, like I said, unbelievably so. And as the train pulls into the station, it starts to obscure the daylight in the station, and the train completely makes this dark shadow. Now, this is Hitchcock magic.
Yeah.
This is planning like you can't believe. This is not CGI. That sunlight blocked out, so it blocked everything. And you could watch this 100 times, and I'm telling you, you can't figure out how it's done.
But you had to also rig that train for the black smoke because, as you said, it's an unusual
said
thing.
he wanted something in that firebox that's going to make that smoke black. And it's so impressive. I mean, honestly, John, Mr. Dark, from Something Wicked This Way Comes, could not have done a better job of entering the town.
Well, it's perfect. Signifying like this impending evil.
Exactly.
It's almost like there's vampires coming. There is a lot of like vampire type images in this. I just have to say, him in the dark. He's always in the dark. On the train, he's in this closed coffin with the curtains closed. There's a weird thing going on there.
Daylight doesn't suit him.
And did you notice the scene as the train pulls through? Dad and the little girl run towards where the train car is going to stop, but the little boy stops to turn and look at the train. And he's just alone there.
Yeah.
In the middle of this frame as this shadow comes by. And again, it's another Hitchcock thing, I think. We've heard the mom talk about Charlie's her youngest brother.
Yeah.
He was the favorite.
Yeah.
And here's the youngest boy in the family, alone.
Yeah.
There's all these weird couplings. I'll just say that. And it happens throughout the film.
So Uncle Charlie is now coming out of the train. We see the doctor who's playing cards outside his little cabin, and the doctor's helping him get down the stairs. The porter's helping him get down the stairs. Even the wife of the doctor helping him get downstairs. And he looks terrible.
He's got a cane.
He's got a cane. He's kind of hunched over. He's got this trench coat over him, I guess, to keep him warm or whatever. And as soon as he gets a little away from the train, he just takes that trench coat off. He grabs the cane and just walks like he's walking down Fifth Avenue. And it reminded me of Gene Wilder as Willy Wonka. Because if you watch the first part when Gene Wilder comes out as Willy Wonka, he's kind of stumbling along and he looks old and all of a sudden he does a somersault. Yeah. And he just does, "Here I am, folks." And I remember Gene Wilder saying when he was doing that movie that he said, "I had to show that this guy is not on the up and up. I had to show that this guy is a trickster." And that's why he did that somersault thing. But that's exactly what Uncle Charlie does.
He's never revealed. I mean, like, he's got everyone thinking he's something else. Like, what's funny is, like, the kids run up to him and the dad run up to him. Little Charlie or young Charlie hangs back, and she sees that. Does she even say something to him? Like,
she said, I thought you were sick. Sick? Me?
It's funny how the whole family goes to grab his bags and start carrying them. And he just walks behind them with the cane like the king.
That's it.
He's always manipulating people to get stuff to do for him.
That's a very good point, John. Yes, absolutely.
And then they come home to this beautiful house on the little street, and there's Emma, the mom, waiting. And you can see, again, she's just like overwhelmed by her little brother coming. So Emma, the mom, is played by Patricia Collinge.
She's terrific. I mean, she really is really great. You believe she is this character, and her emotional range is so great. And when she sees Joseph Cotton, or Charlie, her younger brother, the love that she has for this younger brother is so apparent. And that's how brilliant an actress she is. She's really terrific. And funny, too. Boy, is she funny during this movie. When they get home, Joe, Charlie's dad, brings him upstairs, and he's going to give Charlie's room to him.
Right.
You know, because little Charlie, or the girl, wants him to have the room, he'd be more comfortable. And he's getting his bags and whatnot, he's putting things out, and he's just about to put a hat on the bed. Right. And Henry Travers, Joe, says, not on the bed. And Uncle Charlie looks at him, he goes, "Superstitious, Joe?" And he goes, "No, I just don't like inviting trouble." Well.
That device was used as a plot point in, I don't know if you remember, Drugstore Cowboy.
Absolutely.
Don't put the hat on the bed.
And that was the end of it. That was the end of it. So Joe leaves, and Charlie's getting himself settled into this room, and he's looking around at what a clean, wonderful, all-American town it is, and he looks outside and sees a couple of old women talking on the corner and stuff. And this is a perfect suburban, safe place to be. And he plucks a rose out of the vase of flowers that have been put in his room for himself, and he very sophisticatedly puts it in his lapel, and he takes his cigar, and he takes a puff of it, and then he mockingly just throws the hat on the bed. He's safe. Everything's fine.
So the next scene, they're at dinner, and Uncle Charlie's brought everybody presents. He's even given Emma, the mom, this mink stole, which makes young Charlie so happy because it's just what she deserves.
She should look glamorous, her mother.
But then he pulls out this photograph
right.
of their parents, and he's like, "I've had it the whole time." And it's from 1888. And she sees this, the mother, and she's just overwhelmed by it. And he goes into this little reverie about how back then—
the good old days.
The good old days. Everybody was sweet and pretty then. The whole world, a wonderful world. Not like the world today. Not like the world now. And that's this theme we've seen earlier with the waltzing.
This idealized vision of beauty.
And we all feel that way.
Sure.
Like, we always think the past, and even think about this movie in the 40s, you think America was, and Hitchcock's playing on this. We think this beautiful USA, America town.
That's what everything looks like.
Everything's good.
Not even close. So he wants to give Charlie a present, and she's kind of evasive. She's just so glad he's here. She doesn't want anything else.
It's strange because it's almost like she doesn't want to break the luck, right?
Yeah, or spell. Yeah, good point. Yeah, exactly. So they're having this conversation in the kitchen, and what's interesting to me is that she says to him, we're not just like an uncle and a niece. We're sort of like twins. And what I'm struck by is this. I really feel she has a kind of crush on Charlie.
Oh, yeah.
There's a romantic element. I don't mean a physical, sexual thing, but there's a real, genuine girl crush. This is her hero.
Definitely.
She idolizes. She worships this guy.
Well, again, we've seen her stuck in this little town. He's this worldly guy who they all have different versions of what he is.
Right.
He's this businessman. He's this traveler. He's got all this money, this and that. Yeah. So he's the world to her.
So he gives her this gift. It's this emerald ring. And she goes, you had it engraved for me. And he goes, no, I didn't. And he goes, yeah, sure. There's initials right here. And you see his face kind of freeze up. And then he goes into his little spiel. Oh, well, the jeweler must have rooked me. Right. I'll get rid of it. And no, I love it the way it is. It's great.
But she likes the fact that it's engraved. She says something like, I like the fact that someone was happy with this ring or something like that.
But she has a positive spin on it. And then once again, this theme goes throughout the movie because she just wants to have this magical uncle and she doesn't want anything to taint that vision.
It is a weird shot, though, when he puts the ring on her. It's like a wedding ring. The way it's framed. It's like they're at the altar or something.
The thing that's weird is he puts it on her finger. What uncle's going to put a ring on somebody's finger? It's very uncomfortable to watch because you go, this isn't a romantic scene, but it has that romantic quality.
Yeah.
Enter Herb, a friend of Joe's from down the street who comes over every night about dinner time and loves to talk about true murder or unsolved murder stories.
Yeah, he's holding a true crime magazine.
Right.
I love Emma, the mother. That's Herbert. He's a friend of Joe. They're literary critics.
Yeah, they're literary critics. These are some serious literature.
And he's got like these kind of trashy crime magazines.
Right.
Again, everyone has a different version. Joe is telling him, that's Charlie. He's a New York man. I think we've also heard young Charlie say he's from Philadelphia. No one knows where he's from. They all have a different version of Charlie.
He's definitely the mysterious man.
Yeah.
So Joe and Herb go outside, and they go through this thing throughout the film.
It's like a back and forth.
A back and forth thing about how they could murder each other. And it's very funny.
What's the best way?
It's very funny stuff. This is a classic example of Hitchcock at his best. And it's a classic thing that Hitchcock puts into his films that makes them so great. It reminds me of Kurosawa. The first time I saw Kurosawa was Yojimbo, and I was really thrown by it because I expected this really dramatic type story and whatnot, which it is, but there's really weird humor. So Herb and Joe start talking about murder. And Herb is a big fan of who he calls the Frenchman, which obviously is Poirot. And talk about what you want about Sherlock Holmes. This little Frenchman beats them all. And Joe's not that impressed with, he's not that impressed with Poirot. He goes, air bubbles don't necessarily kill a person. Those writers from the other side, they get too fancy. A hit on the head with a blunt instrument is the best way to commit murder. I'd walk in, hit you on the head with a piece of lead pipe or a loaded cane. And Herb, Hume Cronin, is disgusted by this. What would be the fun of that?
Yeah, right.
What would be the fun of that? Where's your planning? Where's your clues? And Joe goes, I don't want any clues. I want to murder you.
He's like, I'd murder you so it don't look like murder.
Yeah. So we go back inside from the porch, and Uncle Charlie's he's reading the evening paper. And we see him from this low angle where the paper's obscuring his face. And then you see his whole body tense. And he lowers the paper slowly. And you see his face drop, and this cigar that this cocky little jaunty thing he's doing with the cigar, it's just hanging from his mouth. And his face, kind of goes white. He looks worried, but at the same time, he looks angry. So he calls over Anne, the young girl, the owlish younger daughter, the bookish girl, and he says, you want to see how to make a house out of a newspaper? She's not impressed with it. And then Roger comes in.
Yeah.
And sees the paper. He goes, "What'd you do to Papa's paper?"
Yeah.
And then Charlie comes in and says, "What did you do to Papa's paper, you
Everyone's
two?"
concerned about this damn paper.
And then the two kids basically point to Charlie like, it's his fault. We didn't do anything.
And Charlie notices, young Charlie, I'll say, because she starts to put it back together and she realizes 2 pages missing.
Right.
Until we get to the bedroom. And he's up there and she comes and she knows he's hiding something.
Right.
So she reaches and grabs these 2 pages out of his pocket, and again, suddenly, boom, you can see he just goes very dark.
It's so Hitchcock, John, and it's so creepy. I just got the chills because he gets up and he's not Wonderful Uncle Charlie anymore. He's Mr. Hyde.
Yeah. And he goes right at her.
Right at her like an animal.
Grabs her wrists.
And hard.
Yeah.
And holds them hard.
She's like, "You're hurting me."
Yes.
Like she can't believe it.
Yeah.
And automatically he switches off again. And he apologizes and he tries to like talk it off.
I was just joking.
Yeah.
I'm just fooling.
But you can see in her face.
She's shocked and she's
totally in shock.
And she's hurt too at the same time. I don't mean pain, I mean emotionally hurt. But she doesn't want to think badly of her magical Uncle Charlie.
She can't.
And we do this to family members, people we love. We just pass these things off that okay, it's just so and so. Enter Jack Graham, the character. He's played by MacDonald Carey. And I remember MacDonald Carey from one thing. He made a bunch of movies. Yeah, he won Emmys, etc. But I remember him from one thing. Like sands through the hourglass, so are the days of our lives. I'm MacDonald Carey. And that's what I remember from his intro to the days of our lives.
So there's this whole convoluted story about here. They're doing some kind of poll for the government.
Right. It's obviously something phony is going on here.
Yeah.
Charlie wants nothing to do. Uncle Charlie wants nothing to do with it. So we have Jack Graham, and we have his photographer, Mr. Sanders, and they're going to take some pictures, and they're doing some interviews, and no matter what, Mother does not want her house or her family life to be exposed in any possible bad light. So the photographer says, let's take some pictures of the kitchen. You said you're going to bake a cake. So they go into the kitchen. And as they go into the kitchen, there's a beautiful shot of Uncle Charlie looking down the stairs. And nobody does stairs like Hitchcock. And it's a real film noir angle. The banisters are all kind of crisscrossing, and there's a great shadow of the curtains right behind Joseph Cotton's head. And it's a perfect film noir shot. I mean, it's picture perfect. It once again, it may be because it's Joseph Cotton, but I'm thinking of Kane. It looks like something out of Citizen Kane. And there's a scene in Citizen Kane where Charles Foster Kane is going down, and he's yelling at this politician.
It's interesting because this shot, you're seeing the shadow on the ceiling. That's one thing Citizen Kane was known for, because it was one of the first movies to actually show ceilings, because they did all these
That's
low
a very
angles.
good point, yeah. So they go into the kitchen, and they're going to take a picture of Mother making a cake. It's very funny, because every single time that he wants to take a picture of a certain thing, she says, "Oh, no, you can't take a picture of that chair because that needs a new slipcover. I can't have that in a photograph of showing my house that way. Let's have a picture of you breaking the egg." No, you cannot break an egg first. You don't break an egg first when you're making a cake. First, you have to cream the butter and sugar. You see the expression of it. It looks like the guy wants to just smack his face with his hand. You go, Jesus Christ. But he's very nice about it, and he just, okay, sure, we'll do whatever you want. And then Jack Graham wants to get upstairs and take a look at some more stuff to do with Uncle Charlie.
Of course. Well, it's interesting because Charlie, who clearly did not want to be with these guys, he's kind of lurking around.
Sure.
And when they were upstairs, you see him out
on the back
porch.
Right.
And then he starts to come in, and that's when that guy, the photographer, is like, "Oh, I'll take a shot of the hole.
I'll take a shot of the hole," and accidentally, quote unquote, gets a shot of Uncle Charlie. And Uncle Charlie asks for the film.
He walks right up to him.
Says, "I really don't like my picture being taken. I'll have to ask you for the film." And that's when you watch young Charlie look at him. And it's a really neat shot because all the shot is young Charlie's face and Joseph Cotton's arm out here underneath her chin,
right,
and his hand waiting for that film. She looks to the right of the frame and the camera. And then she looks up Uncle Charlie's arm at his face, and she's thinking, what the heck is this all about?
Next is Jack Graham, the detective.
What happens is he comes clean, and she's horrified. You've lied to us. You've lied to us. How could you do such a thing? And he says, look, we're looking for somebody that we think is your uncle.
Well, he does say, there's a man loose in the country. We don't know much about him or what he even looks like, but we believe he's your uncle. And then he just says, there's another man we're chasing back east in New England.
Right.
So there's two men they're kind of looking at.
And it's got to be between these two, we believe we got the guy. So you got to keep your mouth shut because we're going to investigate this. And if it's your Uncle Charlie, he's going to jail.
He's trying to enlist her.
But she still doesn't know what he's done. Now, this plants the seeds of doubt even more in her head. And she goes up to his room, and she goes in the garbage can, and she looks. And she's trying to figure out what's in this newspaper, but it's so torn up, she can't figure it out. So Anne's the bookish one, and she says, well, if you're trying to find something in the newspaper, then why don't you just go to the library? They have newspapers there. And she takes off. She goes downtown to the library, and she's going fast. She's going fast. And it's a really great piece of music. It's mostly piano, and it really pumps your veins because you're feeling that tension for her because she has to find out what was in that paper. So she's going and she's going. She's walking faster and faster, and all of a sudden she tries to go across the street, and this car almost hits her. And then she doubles back, and then the traffic cop says to her, hold on there, young lady. What do you think you're doing? You could have got hit by that car. You need to be more careful. And you look up at the clock, and it's like 3 minutes to 9, and she's going to miss it. She's going to miss it. So she tries to run across the street, and she gets bogged down with a couple of more cars, and she gets to the door, and it's locked. It's a really beautiful scene because musically and visually, it all comes together.
Yeah.
And your heart is beating because you're going, God, I got to, for her, I got to see this. I got to see what's in that paper. And the one light goes out and the other light goes out, and it's all to the tune of the chimes of the clock. And it does it 9 times. Right. 1 light, 2 lights, 3 lights. So this is Hitchcock plotting this thing out and working with the composer to make all of these things come together. It's beautiful.
I like how when she gets in, there's the woman who kind of scolds her for making her stay. I'll give you 3 minutes. But she knows her name. And what's great about it is the librarian, the crossing guard, everybody knows who Charlie is in town.
That's
everybody knows everybody.
It's
just a
town.
Beautiful little setting, the way, because she's mad at her, this stern librarian, but she's also nice to her.
Right.
It's like they all watch out for her.
Absolutely.
And she finds this paper. And she's searching through and suddenly see her. And she sees this article. And we cut to the headline, and it's, "Where is the Merry Widow Murderer?" So that's actually his name, or the name of this killer.
And the camera pans down further to read more. Nationwide search underway for strangler of 3 rich women.
At the bottom of the article, as it pans down, the last victim was the widow, Mrs. Bruce Mathewson.
And she takes off the emerald ring, and she looks at the initials. Yeah. And she's just sick.
And she just puts it all together.
And she gets up, and there's really great body language in this. She gets up, and she really has trouble holding her footing. And she holds on to the table, and then she holds on to the chair, and then the camera, I just got chills.
Yeah.
The camera pulls back to this really high angle, and there she is in this middle of this room, all alone, casting this one lone shadow. How the hell is she going to keep this secret? How the hell is she going to deal with this secret?
Well, that shot just mirrors, it's a high angle shot, as you said, it just mirrors that beginning shot when we see Charlie running through the empty lot from the police, Uncle Charlie.
That's a much higher angle, though.
It's very similar, though. That's my thought.
Put him up on the screen.
That'll be on the website.
All right.
Look on our blog page.
So then things come to a head the next night at dinner. She starts poking and prodding Uncle Charlie to let him know that she's on to him. And during the dinner, we see a different Uncle Charlie revealed. His face shot in profile. Basically, Charlie's point of view. He says, but in cities, it's different. The cities are full of women, middle-aged widows, husbands dead. They leave their money to their silly wives. And what do the wives do, these useless women? What do they do with the money? They eat it, drink it, lose it at bridge. They smell of money. Horrible, faded, fat, greedy women. And Charlie goes, but they're alive. They're human beings. And he turns to the camera. I just got chills again.
Yeah.
He's turning to Charlie, but he turns to the camera because you're seeing him looking right at you. And he says, are they? And I mean, it doesn't get much more chilling than that.
It's classic Hitchcock. When he's doing his spiel, we're just looking at the side of his face. It's like this other side of him almost.
Yeah.
So she storms out of the house.
Right.
And Uncle Charlie gets up. He follows her, but he tells the mom, I'll take care of it.
I'll take care of it. Yeah.
And he goes running after her.
They end up at a place called the Till 2.
The Till 2.
Yeah, like Until 2.
I love it.
Till 2 bar.
Which, again, here you see this American town, and this reminded me of It's a Wonderful
Life. Absolutely.
You're suddenly in this sleazy bar. Like, I love when you do.
So it's like when Violet Bix is getting arrested.
It's almost spooky.
It is.
And
this is not the side of town that Charlie's used to.
Yeah, and she
sees a classmate who's a bar.
Well, she says going in, I've never been in this place.
A place like this.
And when they sit down, the waitress comes over.
She's a classmate.
From high school.
Yeah. What a weird scene this is. Just from this girl talking. She talks so flatly as well.
And definitely her diction is from the wrong side of the tracks.
Right.
So she clearly did not have the same upbringing as Charlie.
Exactly.
Or advantages, I have to say. I mean, you get the sense Charlie's going away to college.
Absolutely.
This girl.
Smartest girl in the class.
This girl's like, you can tell she had a whole series of jobs that got her here.
Right.
And she's now this young woman.
This is it.
Yeah, a waitress in this sleazy
same age
bar
as this teenage girl.
in the Till 2. Thank you for remembering that.
Uncle Charlie tries to clear the air. You know, he says, something has come between us. We're old friends. More than that, we're like twins. You said it yourself. And he reaches out to touch her, and she recoils. You
can see in this scene and earlier scenes, he's noticing. He sees the change, as he said, but in his face, you could see the look on his face. It suddenly, he's like thinking now.
He's explaining himself to the best of his ability, but she's not buying it. And she says, how could you do those things? And then he starts to get nasty.
Yeah.
He picks up this napkin, and he starts to twist it around and fold it, and he starts to twist it almost like he's strangling it with his fists. And she notices it, and he puts his hands down. But then he gets mad, and he says, you think you know something, don't you? There's so much you don't know. Do you know the world is a foul sty? If you rip off the fronts of houses, you'd find swine. The world's a hell. What does it matter what happens in it? Oh my God.
Yeah.
Chilling.
Just by answering her, I mean, she's implying he's the guy. Like, how could you do this? He doesn't actually admit it, but just by answering her this way, he's kind of admitting it. You know what I mean? He's not saying no.
Well, he's not going to admit to anything.
No.
But the thing is that he's actually pissed at her for recoiling from him and being angry at him.
Well, he's starting to see her now as he sees town, like these people.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like
she's just another.
What do you know?
She's just another person.
And on the way home, he tries to enlist her in helping him. He's using this supposed bond they have. He's like, the same blood flows through our veins, Charlie.
And the thing that's interesting is there are moments when he is pleading with her. He says, please help me. And she looks at him with horror.
Yeah.
Help you. Horror and disgust. She She can't even believe this guy is asking for help. He's a murderer, a cold-blooded killer of these 3 different women. And he says, it'll kill your mother. And if they get me, it'll be the electric chair. Now, no matter how much she's horrified by him and repulsed by him and whatnot, she still has that bond with this Uncle Charlie of hers. She can't fully get rid of it. She doesn't want to see him go to the electric chair.
You can understand him. He's like, I'm so tired of running.
Right.
And you can imagine that. I mean, not that I'm
the
sympathetic.
poor guy.
The poor guy. But they're always on his tail. We've seen it throughout the whole movie.
It's nonstop.
But it is amazing now how honest he is with her.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, the cards are now out.
So she says, all right, just go. Just leave. All right, I'll leave in a few days.
Right. You have to give me time.
You've got your few days. Just go. Please, just go.
So the scene ends. This is kind of poignant. He goes, she's outside in the dark on the porch.
Right.
And she looks through the window in the door, and Dad is carrying Ann up the stairs on his back.
Right.
And she's looking at that, and she kind of has a smile, and then she just starts crying. You just see in her face how her world is crumbling.
Yeah.
And she's basically losing her innocence. She's not the innocent girl anymore. She's seeing this other side of life.
And her hero is completely destroyed. So the next day, Charlie's in the front yard, and Uncle Charlie's up on the porch. And Herb ambles by, and he starts talking to Joe. And he says, they caught the married widower in Maine. That the police were just about to nab him at the airport. And he ran, and he says gleefully, plunk, into the propeller, tore him to pieces. And even Joe gets charged out. He just is like, oh.
What's funny is you see Charlie hears it. Uncle Charlie, there's a little relief in his face. He kind of runs up the stairs.
Oh, no. There's no. There's more than a little relief. Yeah. He basically just wipes his hand and just, I'm done. And he's just got the spring in his step, and he's going up the stairs thinking, okay, this is great. I'm clear as can be. I'm just going to settle right in. Ooh, I could really use a meal right now.
Well, he stops, right? And
he stops and turns around, and she's there at the bottom. It's a great shot. I just got chills. It's a great shot. And this is, once again, nobody does stairways like Hitchcock. and she's standing there all the way at the bottom, and she's just staring at him. And his face drops, and his whole mood changes because he knows this isn't going to work.
Well, she's the only one
That's right.
that knows, right?
That's right.
But what's cool about that, I don't know if you notice, is he's running up the stairs and he starts to turn around. It just goes silent, the soundtrack. Mm-hmm. And I think you may hear birds, but it really just gets really quiet.
You're right.
It's really, it is spooky.
It's so beautifully done, and it's chilling because she's looking at him like, are you kidding me? So finally, little Charlie, confronts Uncle Charlie and says, you've got to get out of here. When are you leaving?
Yeah.
And he says, I'm not. And she says, if you don't, I'll kill you myself. That's how I feel. So that's the end of that.
Well, it's interesting how he plays on her conscience, because it's like, as he said earlier, how would her mother feel? But also, what would happen to her father's job at the bank? There is a lot weighing on this. I mean, she knows, like, the whole life would collapse, and her families would be affected.
Because it's such a small town. This would be the scandal of scandals.
Exactly.
They have to burn the house down and spread the entire property with salt or something, right?
I can see that.
The next night, Uncle Charlie is supposed to speak at the Mother's Ladies Club.
They're all dressed in their
all
finery.
dressed, tux, dressed to the nines.
Who's going what car? You know, the taxi's here, you go there.
But Uncle Charlie says, oh, I want you to listen to my speech. I'll drive with you. And this really freaks out little Charlie because she doesn't want to be anywhere near this guy, especially by herself. So she goes out to the garage to turn the car on and then back it out. But the car's already on. And she looks for the key to shut it off, but there's no key. Remember in the old days, John, you could actually leave it on and pull the key out. So she tries to go outside because there's a lot of smoke, and it's putt,
Yeah.
putt,
It's been
smoke.
sitting in this garage.
She's choking, and she's choking. So she reaches for the door, and the door closes right on her.
Yeah.
And she pounds and pounds and pounds, but she can't get out. Then we go inside, and Uncle Charlie says, it's getting a little chilly. Better close the window. And then he goes over and says, let's have a little music, and turns the radio up loud. And there's no way for her to get out, and he's now making it so nobody can even hear it. Herb comes by and says, there's somebody knocking on the door. I think somebody's stuck in there. So everybody runs outside, and Uncle Charlie runs over, and he kicks
You see the little stick.
that he used to jam the door because he didn't want it to be seen that way.
So she's there, and she's collapsing, and they all go to grab her.
First thing Uncle Charlie does, is he runs over to the car and sticks the key back in so he can't be implicated for this.
Right.
And they get her to the ground, and, Anne's lying on her and crying and stuff, and Mother says, get off. And Uncle Charlie comes over to, quote unquote, revive her. So he's patting her hand and say, it's okay, Charlie, it's okay, Charlie. And Charlie looks up at her and says, with this really sick expression on her face and anger, and says, just go away.
It's like the way her voice drops.
Oh my God.
And she got
but
that
this
little
is the
rasp
range
to it.
she has.
Yeah.
You can't believe this sweet young girl could even say it that
It's
way.
almost like The Exorcist.
Yeah,
the way she
right,
says it.
exactly. Your mother's ex-cock it out.
And I love how Herb is like, lucky thing I passed by. He's so proud of
Yeah,
himself.
he is very, well, it is a lucky thing he passed by. So seeing no other way, Uncle Charlie finally announces that he's leaving. So they take him to the train station. He says to the two kids, Roger and Anne, why don't you go on board and you can take a look at the train for a little bit. And he's about to step on board, and he says to young Charlie, well, come on, this way you can make sure they get off.
So the creepy thing is, he looks down the end of the car,
Right.
and there's the widow from the ladies' club.
Yeah, she's an older woman. She's got bucks.
And
you can tell.
She's seen him before. She kind of waves to him.
She doesn't kind of wave. She just is thrilled that he's on the train. And then he talks to little Charlie, and he's kind of just laying things out for her and says, you were right to make me leave. It's best for your mother. It's best for everybody. I don't think she could stand the shock. So he's still kind of putting the guilt in here.
Yeah.
That, you better keep your mouth shut on this. And he holds her hand. And then
The train starts to move.
the train starts to move.
Well, he keeps talking to her.
Yeah, he keeps
as it's moving.
he
And he's
keeps
holding her hand.
He's holding her hand, won't let go, and he's telling an old story about her. When your mother was younger, and you're
Yeah.
going, "Oh my God, what the hell is this guy doing?" And then you see what he's doing.
Yeah.
He
And she sees it.
and she does, and she just says, "Uncle Charlie, no," and he grabs her, puts his hand over her mouth, and pulls her toward the train door.
So he kind of takes her
Over to the door.
end of the car.
Right.
And he opens the door.
He has his hand over her mouth.
And the train is, by this time, picked up some speed.
Yeah. He says to her, I have to do this, Charlie, so long as you know what you do about me. And then the train gets a little faster and a little faster. And this is where it's kind of creepy and sadistic. He's kind of narrating it. Not yet. Just a little faster.
Yeah.
It has to get just a little faster and a little faster. And then he's trying to push her out the door. She looks like she's just about to get thrown out, and then you see her hand, typical Hitchcock, you see her hand just grab to the handle, and she can't hold on. And then she makes a last-ditch effort. She grabs onto the door. He loses his footing and falls back in the path of the oncoming train.
And of course, it's an oncoming train.
Yes.
It's not Hitchcock without, hey, there's another train coming the other way.
Yeah, well, you're going to just fall off. It's much better because the train is like right there, and there's no way he could even remotely roll off. Could do some sort of commando roll. It couldn't happen to a nicer guy.
Great Hitchcock. My one comment about it is the year before, Joseph Cotton was in The Magnificent Ambersons.
Right.
And different movies, but very similar themes. Funny enough, The Magnificent Amberson takes place in that Victorian era Uncle Charlie keeps referring to.
The perfect era.
But that movie's also about how we have this vision of Americana, but there's this dark underbelly.
It's a really chilling movie. And it's kind of weird if you think about it, because it's going on during World War II. And you have all these different things. You would think most of these movies would be kind of fantasies, or even, war movies that are, we're winning for our side and stuff. And even by today's standards, those scenes with Joseph Cotton, I was just completely freaked out by watching this. It's so creepy for this guy to be so calculated and be able to maneuver all through these different things. And I think he could just lay down and as you say, put down some roots in this neighborhood. Yeah. Oh my God.
Well, it's interesting again how we often view films from the past, or the past being this innocent place.
Right.
And films kind of had to portray it that way because of the Hays Code. But if you're an adult, you see right between the lines that nothing is perfect. It's not the perfect past we think of.
It's chilling, as you said before, because we have this idea of what the good old days were, what old movies were supposed to make you feel like. And I think Hitchcock really was the man for the job to take you somewhere and show you that it's not all such a pretty place, that there's definitely evil out there somewhere.
Well, that's all the time we have this week.
We'd like to thank our friend Glenn Arnowitz for his music.
And of course our listeners for tuning in.
So join us next week for another episode of
Film Detour.
If you like our show, please recommend us to your friends. Subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Play, and leave a review.
Go to our website at filmdetourpodcast.com to leave comments or email us with questions. You can also visit us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.